Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello there, everybody. This is Jay with the GSMC Technology Podcast, a part of the GSMC Podcast Network. So, here with more cool technology news for you for the week. So, let's just jump right in. So, Siri is something that I have never, ever personally used, but I'm familiar with it. You know, I've heard it before. I know friends who have used it. I want to say I've had family that has probably used it. You know, it's where you can say, hey, Siri, show me this, or hey, Siri, show me that, or how do I get here, or how do I go there? It's basically what it is. It's like a voice command, you know, kind of like helper, in a manner of speaking. So when I saw this article, I thought it was kind of interesting, but I didn't really know what it was about at first. So I guess Siri has a either another app or like some kind of like, you know, kind of thing connected to it called Siri Shortcuts. And I guess recently this got some updates. So this app, you know, arrived with iOS 12. It's as a way to unlock Siri's potential by allowing users to create their own custom voice commands and workflows. So now Siri Shortcut, as I can tell, can do a few other things as well. So like including setting alarms and timers, getting the latest weather, and much, much more. So, let's see. We got a lot here. Let's just get started. One second here. Let's see. So, for starters, it has a new get current weather and get weather forecast actions. So this means you can ask for... You're already able to ask for this sort of information. It's the top cases for voice assistants like Alexa and Google Assistant. So it makes sense to offer these sorts of commands to Siri Shortcut users as well. So there's also a new create alarm, toggle alarm, and start timer actions, which addressed another notable hole in the Shortcuts app when it launched. Turns out many people were confused about how to use alarms within the app because these actions just weren't available. And the request often came up on Apple's own support site too. So the new release, Siri Shortcuts 2.1, addresses this problem. There are also other new actions that include the ability to convert between a variety of units from the measurement and convert measurement actions. The ability to get the most recent set of imported photos from the Photos app using the Get Last Import action, and the ability to start recording video immediately in the Take Video action. So, Siri Shortcuts version 2.1 tries to be the first major update following the app's release with iOS 12. So, of course, the app today still largely appeals to iOS power users, those who are already comfortable using its predecessor workflow, and who understand how to build routines. So it sounds to me, as far as I can tell, with this update, it's just kind of like, you know, taking care of some user complaints, some user questions, some issues and concerns, and really it sounds as well, which I do kind of like about it. It sounds like it tries to make this app a bit more user-friendly too, which I think is wonderful, because for me, I'm not completely tech incompetent, But I can't say I'm entirely as tech savvy as I like to be either. It's just the reality. It's just the way I am. It's probably the way I'll always be. So, finding a way to kind of fine tune this app and make it a little bit easier to use, and some features that I'm sure people like me would use all the time, like, hey, alarms, I'm sorry, I need those in the morning. It's just the way it goes, especially if I have to work. I'm not a morning person. As much as I love to be a morning person, as much as I sometimes wish I just one day became a morning person, it's just not the way I am. It's just not. It's just the reality. It's the truth. It's just not how I am. So an alarm in the morning is absolutely wonderful. I would probably use Siri. I already use Google Maps for this. Just like, hey, tell me the shortest route over here, right? And with shortcuts, it sounds like, and I've had this before with Google Maps again, where I'll be going somewhere and it says, hey, take this alternate route, especially when I go to Los Angeles sometimes. I should do it a few times a year. It's nice when it says go this way and then I see the freeway where it's bumper to bumper. I'm like, hey, you know what? That saved me time in the long run. It may seem like it's a little bit longer now where I'm trying to go, but if you're telling me to go some alternate route, it saves me time. It just does, and gas, which is always good to save. So yeah, and I can understand some confusion because it's like when you do new things with an app or bring out new versions of an app, as I've said on this podcast before, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little buggy. It's not perfectly fine-tuned, and it might have some issues, and it sounds like, Apple has heard their users' complaints and concerns and issues, and this update to Siri Shortcuts wants to try to take care of and alleviate some of those issues and concerns. So I think that's really, really cool. Yeah, and it sounds like it's just easier to use. So you can say, hey, Siri, create an alarm or start a timer, which you could use the timer, of course, if you're cooking or, maybe even if you're working out. I'd probably assume people would use it more for cooking than for working out, but I guess it could be used for both. I guess it's a possibility. It'd be kind of nice, too, to have the convert measurement one, because, if you're doing some kind of project and, you're not entirely sure of what is what or how do you convert what to what, sounds like a pretty cool, easy little thing there that would get, the project moving along better. So that's a cool little one they have. And I haven't used my phone personally much for photos, but I will say it'd be nice to have that, and taking videos, I've done it a little bit, but I do it more for my camera than I would really for my phone. But again, iPhones and iPads just have better cameras than my cell phone does anyway. I've said this in previous episodes. My camera on my phone is not bad, but it's just not at the level of Apple. It's just not. It's just the reality. Theirs are more, clearer, better, better flash, better lots of things. So I have admitted that. Even though I can't say I'm yay Apple and this big Apple user, I can say, they do have that going for them. They do. It's just the reality. And it's probably easier to use the internet, and it's probably easier to, import things, so I can see, why this would be good. So if you have been having some issues or problems with Siri Shortcuts, this may help alleviate some of them. Like I said, I haven't personally used Siri. I just haven't. But yeah, if you do, and like I said, I think Siri Shortcuts is an extension of it. That's the word I was looking for earlier, an extension of it. It seems like what it really wants to do is, as simple as I can tell, is it does want to kind of offer you shortcuts to certain different things, kind of like it says, if you're cutting a piece of wood and you're like, hey, how much, centimeters is this? It'll tell you instead of you having to try to figure it out for yourself. Right. And, or it'll help you figure it out quicker. That's the better word there. And, it just gives, and the weather one would be nice because I know at least where I live, the weather does change sometimes. I'm like, hey, cool, it's going to be 60s and 70s and all that stuff. And then I'm like, oh man, it's going to be 40 at night and that's going to be kind of cold. So I probably want an extra blanket, maybe a space heater, and is it going to rain tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. You never really know. So it'd be nice to just kind of get that updated weather stuff. I have something like that on my phone, but it'd be nice to have it on here because the weather does change all the time, especially certain times of the year, at least in, California where I live. It's just the reality. So, yeah, this is available as far as I can tell now. And and it's, those who were already comfortable using it will probably just like how it becomes a bit more easy, user-friendly than it was when it first came out. So we're going to take ourselves a short little break right now. We'll be back in a few moments with more technology news.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hello, everybody. This is Jay, back for some more technology news. So the next one is one that kind of jumped out to me and was pretty interesting. And I've talked a little bit about this before, like some things like this, like I did drones an episode or two ago. I've talked about some previous little kind of robot, possibilities out there in the past. But this is one that is pretty interesting. So it's about a team of graduate students from Cornell University and the University of Pennsylvania made this idea their focus and produced both the modular, self-reconfiguring robot itself and the logic that drives it. So in a paper published today in Science Robotics, their paper, the team documents the groundwork they undertook, and although it's still extremely limited, it does hint at how this type of versatility will be achieved in the future. So this little robot itself, which is just a little robot with a bunch of different wheels, and I don't even remember if it had any arms or legs. There was a short YouTube video on it, but it's just a basic robot that they decided to call Smores-EP. Might be better described as a collection of robots. Small cubes, it's a popular form factor, equipped with wheels and magnets that can connect to each other and cooperate when one or all of them just won't do the job. The brains of the operation lie in a central unit equipped with a camera and depth sensor it uses to survey the surroundings and decide what to do. Now, let's put this in more concrete terms. Say a robot like this one is given the goal of collecting the shoes from around your apartment and putting them back in your closet. It gets around your apartment fine, but ultimately identifies a target shoe that's underneath your bed. It knows that it's too big to fit under there because it can perceive dimensions and understands its own shape and size. But it also knows that it has functions for accessing closed areas, and it can tell that by arranging its parts in such and such a way, it should be able to reach the shoe and bring it back out. Now, of course, don't worry. The robots aren't quite at the collect shoes or collect remaining humans stage yet. These tests, to which the team subjected their little robot, were more like get around these cardboard boxes and move any pink labeled objects to the designated drop-off area. Even this type of carefully delineated task is remarkably difficult, but the robot did do them just fine, though it was rather slowly, as lab-based bots tend to be. So this is an interesting little thing that came around, and it sounds like one of those articles that just lets you know, hey, you know what? There's this new robot out there. We pretty much just ran some tests to kind of have it do very basic, simple tasks. Correct? That's just what it said, and I saw a photo of it. It looks interesting. Looks almost like snake-like or centipede or caliper-like is how I remember seeing it. And it's just like, they created this little robot and just wanted to see, hey, what can we get it to do? What can we have it push it to do? And it's basically like just run a bunch of different tests on it. That's what this team did. And it's interesting. It is. It's one of those things like, okay, it's not like, hey, like, a Bender robot or like, the Danger Will Robinson robot from Lost in Space or C-3PO or R2-D2 or BB-8 or, any of those big robots. It's not like any of them, okay? It's not like C-3PO can speak hundreds, if not thousands of different languages. It's just not that kind of robot, right? We're nowhere near that kind of robot yet. We're not. This is just, hey, let's have a robot do a few menial tasks and see if we can, if its CPU can help it move around and sense around a little bit. So that's basically what it is. And I thought it was kind of cool. When I heard this, I'm like, all right, that's kind of an interesting little, thing they did, a little thing they tried, just a bunch of different tests to just see, hey, is a robot able to do this? And it sounds like it did a very good job with whatever tasks they asked it to do, right? With very little difficulty. I didn't hear of any issues or problems or concerns that came up, which was, I thought, really, really cool. And what can I say? Robots kind of fascinate me, because one has to remember in Hollywood lately, there's been lots and lots of robots, and most of the time, like in the Matrix series, said robots weren't necessarily a good thing. AI is something I think we always have to worry about. It's something that I think is someday going to come. Someday it's going to happen. Who knows? For all we know, it may already be here. We've seen robots gone bad in, the Terminator movies. We've seen robots gone bad in the Matrix movies. And I want to say there's a bunch of other films too, like where said robots go bad and want to take over. But those are the two that pop into my head, right? And even supposing in the Star Wars comics, there was a point where the robots try to, have a, rebellion and stand up, and, C-3PO supposedly leads them. And, of course, in Futurama, we've seen a number of times where Bender, wants to lead a rebellion to, kill all humans. We've seen that. So, it's come up a number of different times in Hollywood. And although it's Hollywood and it's make-believe, oh, yes, I, Robot is a good example. It's another one with Will Smith. But anyways, it wants to show, it's make-believe, it's just, what could be, but it does kind of show, hey, you have to be careful with it, right? You just have to. It's a good idea. And it sounds like, as far as I've heard, that's what they're doing. They're treading softly, hey, let's, see, build simple little robots and, have them do simple little tasks and see what they can do. And that's that. Just go from there. They've done that with drones and a few things like that, but they're not going, hey, let's give them fully functional bodies and AI brains. And no, we're not anywhere near that yet. And I don't think, as far as I can tell from what I've seen, we're going to get there anytime in the near future. I don't think so. But again, someday it might happen. What if we're lucky? Maybe someday it'll be like Data. Maybe. But we have to remember, even in that, though, there was, two robots before Data, and one of them was not a good robot. So there's always the risk with it. But when I saw this article, I'm like, hey, it's kind of cool. It's robots. I like technology. I'm a nerd. If you haven't, noticed by my episodes by now, I am a nerd. I'm okay with it. I have no problems admitting it. I'm happy about it. It is a part of who I am. And, yeah, just so I thought it was an interesting article. And it just shows you, where there's little strides being made in robotics here and there. But that's the key word. It's little strides. It's not something is coming, right away and it's going leaps and bounds. No, it's just not. It's baby steps. And as far as I can tell with a technology like this, that's probably the best course of action is, hey, take baby steps. Take your time. There's no rush. There's no hurry. You don't need to be the first person who creates, AI and robots and, armies. You just don't need to do it. It's just the way it is. Even in Detroit Become Human, when that does come along, it doesn't help us. It hurts us a lot. I mean, we have where, the unemployment goes down and a lot of jobs that we used to do, we just don't do anymore. So there are implications to such a thing. So, but it stood out to me, and I thought I'd bring it here. And I'm sure in the future I'll probably bring some other stuff about robots too, because it's just kind of cool to read about. I think it's cool to talk about, and it's kind of cool to see what's going on with it and how it's, moving forward and things like that. So yeah, be on the lookout for there may be more, stuff about robots or drones or things like that in the future, because I think it fits the episode pretty well. So other than that, we're going to take ourselves another short little break, and we'll be back in a few moments with more technology news.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey there, everybody. This is Jay, back for your final little bit of technology news for this episode. So, Nintendo, I want to say just like a year or two ago now, maybe 3 years, decided to do something called the NES Classic. It was a little smaller Nintendo system that came with a bunch of games preloaded onto it. It was like $80, and it ended up doing really, really well. It was really, really popular. People really, really grasped onto it and really, really enjoyed it. And it was so popular they ran out a few times. And I believe, as far as I know, it's still a really popular console. Only in the last year or two they said, you know what, let's do the next system. An SNES Classic, a Super Nintendo Classic. So again, it's a smaller system. It came with like 10, 15 games, including Star Fox 2, which never got released in America, and a bunch of the system's most popular games. It was, again, I want to say $80, maybe like $80, maybe a little bit more, but it was still a pretty affordable price for all the games you got with it. And it did very, very well again. Fans really, really like it. I know some people have played it. They really, really enjoy it. And there's been rumor, of course, of an N64 Classic being the next one they're going to do. There's nothing set in stone for that yet. But there's been talks about it. So, with Nintendo doing so many of these, them doing so well, and them selling out so many times, and fans, young and old alike, just having a blast playing all these games, it looks like PlayStation has made a decision. They decided, you know what, we need to get on this bandwagon. We need to start doing this too, because you know what? If people like Nintendo, I think they're going to really like ours too. So, they announced, maybe like a while ago now, maybe the last couple months, they're doing a Sony PlayStation Classic. And it just came out in the last couple of weeks. The cost of it, which is $100, which, as far as I've read and heard, fans aren't too happy about. They're really not, because remember, Nintendo's have been much cheaper than that. They haven't been that much. And it's, again, a smaller version of the first PlayStation system, which I want to say I had a PlayStation, but I don't remember having many games on it, nor do I really remember any games that really stood out. I just don't. So I don't remember much about the system itself. So, so recently, they've come out a list with all the games that are going to be on the PlayStation Classic, as they're calling it. So, and I'm going to be honest right now, I don't recognize many of these games. I recognize a few. One big one that fans might want to get it for is Final Fantasy VII, but as far as I know, they've done a few remakes of that. I want to say the game itself isn't too hard to find, I believe, so that one is on it. They've got Destruction Derby, which I've never heard of. Jumping Flash, which I don't know anything about. Intelligent Cube, I know nothing about. They do have Metal Gear Solid on it, which, as far as I've heard, is a popular game. What else is on here? They've got Cool Borders 2, Battle Arena Toshinden, which I have no clue what that is. Mr. Driller. They've got Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, which I think I've heard of, but I've never played. They have the first Rayman game on here, which I guess is kind of cool. They've got Resident Evil Director's Cut, which the graphics look okay, so that's on there. Revelations Persona, which I'm not going to lie, I don't have any clue what that game is. R4 Ridge Racer Type 4 is on here. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo is on here, which is basically just it's almost like Tetris with fighting. Mortal Kombat did a version of it on, I want to say it was either Deception, or it was one of the Mortal Kombat games, like one of the more like ones a couple years ago now. They had something like that on there. And there's Siphon Filter is on here. Tekken 3 is on here, which I guess is a popular game series, which they're still making games for. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six is on here. The first Twisted Metal is on here. And Wild Arms is on here. So those are all the games that are on here. I recognize at least some of the games, but it's kind of weird seeing a picture of Grand Theft Auto, because with how Grand Theft Auto's gone since 3, yeah, the graphics are not that good in this one. Not really. And just, I don't know, me hearing this game list, I'm not that impressed with it. Not really. Because there's some mediocre games on here where, to my memory, the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic, they had a lot, like, games that were like, yeah, those games make sense. You should have those games on there. I agree with you having the games on there, where on here, yeah, there's some that stand out, but I don't know if there's enough. I just don't see, enough that would make me want to go, I need to go out and buy this now. No, I don't see it. That's just the truth. I don't. And I don't think, it's going to... Really, my concern with this system is I don't think it's going to do that well. I just don't. Like, if they knock down the price a little bit, like, hey, have it be like $70 or $80 or something like that, like the other two classics were, maybe you have people jumping on it, but... I don't know. I'm like, I want to be excited for it, but I'm not. I'm just really not. I'm not like, oh, this is going to be great. This system's going to do really well. I don't think so. I just don't, so it's not insane to see, PlayStation doing this. It actually makes perfect sense, but I don't think it was prepared as well as it should have been. That's just the reality. I think what they should do is, go back to the drawing board with this. Put some better, more memorable games on there. Or maybe, what might even be a better idea? Maybe just jump to the PS2 Classic. Maybe that's a better idea. Maybe. It might be. Because I know I had a PlayStation 2, and there were a lot of really good games on that system. I remember that very well. Games that stood out, games were a lot of fun, games that I had, hours of fun playing and would gladly play again. I remember that very well. Whereas this, it's okay. It's not bad. It's got an okay little list there, but I don't think there's enough there to, add to the $100 price tag. I just don't. I just don't. I really don't, And like I said, there's some games in here, I at least recognize the name, or I know of the series, but there's a lot of really strange, mediocre ones on here too. And as far as I know about fans of PlayStation, I don't think it's going to be enough where they're going to be running out to get this thing. I just don't see it. I really don't. It's a good effort, PlayStation. I mean that. Like a good effort, Sony. I mean that. But I don't think it's going to come to the fruition you hope it's going to come to. Now, maybe I'm wrong. It's a possibility. You can pre-order this now. It comes out on December 3rd, so it does come out around the holiday season, which wasn't a bad call, but Yeah, I just have a feeling like this is probably going to blow up in their faces. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it. Maybe I am not correct there, but it just seems like to me there aren't enough games on here where people are just going to be running out and buying it by like 5, 10 at a time. I just don't see it. So that's all we have for technology for you at this on this episode. I hope you learned some really cool things and got some great information. And we'll be back real soon with more technology news.